Hi all, it's Dan from Aspire here. Thanks for joining us this evening. Hopefully those that have got children, they're down. I know that my little one has been a little bit of a terror upstairs, so apologies if you hear anything at the moment. Um, just wanted to introduce the reason behind the webinar, go through a couple of pieces, introduce myself and my colleague who's going to be presenting with me, and go through a bit of housekeeping, and then we'll get started on it. I mean, the reason behind putting this webinar on, there's a few different reasons. First of all, there's lots of advice out there, some of that in inverted commas, in the sense of there's some great advice, but there's also some misleading or unclear advice. So we're trying to help as many schools as we can, support as many schools as we can with giving correct advice and signposting where necessary. We've also had lots of schools asking us for practical support and implementation. So with regards to all of our local schools that we've been working with regards to schools across the country that have been asking to help with regards to resources and what they should be doing. So what we wanted to do is put this in a central place, hopefully answer as many questions as possible, and help you guys with regards to, I know you guys have been in, some of you have been in for the whole time, some of you have been satellite, some of you have been in hubs and on rotors. Hopefully we can settle any nerves, answer as many questions as possible, as I said. So that's why we put this together for you today. With regards to who's with you today, it's myself, Dan Hays, and my colleague Jon Davies. With regards to myself, I've been in the industry about 10 years, working with schools in relation to PE, physical activity and school sport. The roles that I've had, I've delivered in schools, I've supported schools, I've made schools have advice and guidance on finances with regards to the premium, apprenticeship levy and so on and so forth. And what I do now is I support schools with ensuring they've got everything in place that they need. I set up and run the West Midlands PE School Sport Conference. I had over 100 schools there, which we have Sue Wilkinson and her colleagues from the Association for PE at every single year supporting the event, which is fantastic. And I'll just let Jon introduce himself so you know who's speaking to you tonight.
Yeah, hi, good evening all. As Dan said, my name's Jon. I'm the operations manager at Aspire Sports. I've been with Aspire for almost 10 years. I've delivered pretty much all of the programs that we have to offer at Aspire Sports over the last 10 years. What I do now is I look after the day-to-day operations running of our team, so that involves scheduling to deliver in schools, CPD opportunities, giving them support when needed when it comes to their own delivery, arranging quality assurance checks. I support with our HR, and I'm also responsible for our 8 active camp venues around the West Midlands, and ensuring that we remain Ofsted compliant during every holiday period that we deliver our camps in.
Thanks, Jon. I've just prematurely skipped the slide there, apologies. But just a bit of housekeeping, like I said at the start, a couple of things on this slide there. If you can keep your microphones and cameras off, again, it's just to ensure that no audio is disturbed for the other users during this webinar. If you did want to ask questions, and of course we welcome questions throughout, our colleague Luke, you there? Can you just give us a quick hello?
Yeah, evening everyone. Like Dan said, I'll be monitoring the chat during this webinar, so feel free to ask any questions throughout.
On the slide, you can see there's an arrow to the top right there. So if you haven't used GoToMeet before, if you click on that, that should open the chat for you. I know some people have been using it already, which is great. But whenever there's questions, we'll try and answer those throughout. And there is a Q&A section at the end of this. We'll give a solid 15 minutes for that to answer as many questions as we possibly can for you. So any questions you've got at any point, open that chat, drop them in there before you forget them, and we'll get to answering as many as we possibly can. Housekeeping done. I'll pass you back over to Jon to get things started.
I think you've gone. I think you've. I'm shut off a bit too early there, Dan. So I'll do the next bit. So so obviously, just for everyone who don't know, kind of like who Aspire are, we started 16 years ago. We were founded by our company founders, James and Paul. We are based in the West Midlands. We believe that the only way to solve current physical inactivity is by working and collaborating with like-minded people and with organisations. We work very closely, as Dan said, with AFP, not only through our business association, but with their PDB kite mark, due to the high quality training and support that we offer to schools. Like what I said at the start, we offer a range of different services to schools, with one of our most popular services being our PE curriculum support, where we go into schools and help support teachers deliver physical education to an outstanding level. We're an accredited training provider with Sports Leaders UK, First for Sport, and NCFE, delivering CPD, accredited and non-accredited qualifications, as well as apprenticeships nationally for schools, companies and other local authorities. I don't know if Dan wants to jump back in for this bit and obviously speak about our wonderful partners, PE Hub.
Yeah, just really want to give a quick shout out, because as much as we want to support schools, we want to make sure everyone's aware of who's sharing some fantastic information, and a lot of what we produce with regards to this webinar, but also the resources, has come with a joint venture with the PE Hub. For those of you that don't know, they are a planning and assessment portal. They're run by teachers who were teaching for years, been in the industry longer than myself and John. So that's just, we want to give a shout out to PE Hub and let you guys know if you do want any information. They're always sharing some fantastic information, and being a planning and assessment portal, there's loads of great planning advice out there given COVID-19 current situation. We'll obviously be touching on that throughout this, but also the resources, the free resources that you guys will get. We'll be sharing the link for that later, and that includes key activities, safe activities, as well as a PE COVID-19 safe checklist to help you guys know what you're doing and should be doing as well. But yeah, if you wanted any further information, check the PE Hub out. They've got loads of great information there that they're always sharing.
Okay, so I mean, in our current new world, there are many problems that we will face, and obviously we're now going to have to find solutions for, obviously when it comes to delivering PE. We're going to highlight a couple of potential problems or issues or concerns, and we're going to give you some suggested solutions to obviously overcome these. With obviously COVID-19 now becoming a new temporary norm, it's vitally important that amendments have been made to our policies and procedures when dealing with, the likes of behaviour, first aid, or, if we think about, like fire procedures as well. Obviously, with schools being potentially reopened to reception year 1 and year 6 for like the last 2 weeks, obviously I'm very confident that, everyone has got these things in place, but there's just a couple of things that we've highlighted that we thought and we feel are important when it comes to obviously behaviour, fire, and obviously first aid. Obviously, with our children learning in their bubbles, behaviour strategies now may need to be adjusted to ensure that bubbles do not mix. Each school has their own procedures and for behaviour, but we feel the following questions need to be addressed with the children. Have you got clear messaging on the importance and the reasons for social distancing? How are we going to go about reinforcing these important messages? Is it going to be electronic boards, colourful posters, signs on the floor, or like if we think about our younger children, are we going to could we do this through some form of storytelling or playing some kind of simple games? Have you made arrangements for obviously then social distancing of the younger children? Yes, they're probably going to be a lot harder to maintain social distancing because of their age, but we still need to make sure that we are doing our best to socially distance those children, with a DFE advice. Are we as teachers, coaches, going to be modelling social distancing consistently? Have we thought about how we're going to move the children around the school and how we're going to keep that to obviously a minimum? Have you structured your breaks and lunch times, and who's going to be responsible for overseeing anything that's going on at lunch times and break times? And then obviously, have you as a school made amendments to your behaviour policies to make sure that they are compliant with social distancing? And then have you gone about communicating these to all? And like when I say all, we're thinking, everyone within the school. So your teachers, the governors, the children themselves, parents, everyone who's going to come into contact at your school, should know about this. In terms of fire procedures, again, we've thought of, some questions that we may need to consider, and that's, have we considered how it's going to work? Because we are going to have a reduced number of children and staff now in school. Have you thought about what's going to happen if there's going to be any key personnel absences? Are we going to make sure there's more than one fire marshal, on site, for example? How will social distancing rules be reinforced during an evacuation? Has everyone again been briefed? And then, are we still going to make sure we are practicing our fire drills during the next couple of weeks, with obviously our COVID-19 planning in place? And then obviously, like when it comes to dealing with first aid, the advice out there at the moment is minor first aid issues should be dealt with by that teacher or by an adult within that bubble, with obviously only serious first aid being then dealt with by an external person. So at the moment, we've still been delivering in schools during the during the lockdown phase, during the half terms. We've been running some key worker camps, and obviously since we've now gone back into school as of the 1st of June, when our team are having to deal with first aid, we're making sure that we're putting all the right precautions in place to obviously protect our team, because they might have to come in within 2 meters of the child. We've been providing them with disposable masks, gloves, aprons, and also a face shield. Now, we haven't said that the team have got to wear the face shield, but we've given them that option, just as another safety measure for them. And then obviously all the disposable PPE equipment is then obviously being disposed of after use in a bin that is then obviously emptied at the end of the day, just to make sure that nothing's coming in to obviously contact with it. Now, like I said, 5 minutes ago, I'm sure that all of your schools have already got this in place, but those are just some questions that we kind of have been asking our schools, so we can brief our team when obviously it comes for us to return in within our schools. The next bit really, it's obviously, it's really important now that we are updating and undertaking new risk assessments, obviously when it comes to PE. Obviously, we're here to talk specifically about PE, so it's really important that we have done a new risk assessment for everything regarding PE, and then we've also put mitigation strategies in place, and again communicated these to all. Some questions that we feel again that you might want to ask yourself when you're completing your risk assessments is, how are we going to get children in and out of our building safely? How are we then going to move our children around the school? When will our children move around the school? Have we considered the learning environments themselves? We've got our outdoor spaces and our indoor spaces still. Yes, we'll touch on it a bit later. The recommendation is to be doing as much teaching outside when it does come to physical activity and education. But have we, factored in the equipment and the equipment not being used? I'm sure the majority of our school halls have got benches around the outside, or tabletops, or wall bars. How are we going to go about communicating that they're not in use if you're not using them, and ensuring that they are obviously stay clean afterwards. And then obviously then the big one as well is obviously to do a risk assessment for each individual sport that you are going to deliver over the next 5 weeks, and making sure that all of your practices are following obviously guidance. I'm sure you probably all agree that the biggest problem you're going to face is probably going to be the children themselves. Like what I touched on at the start, our children in our early years and potentially year one, may not necessarily understand the concept of social distancing, just because they might have spent the best part of 12 weeks away from their friends and just happy to be back in school with their friends. When we think about the year sixes, again, we might think that the year sixes might be better equipped to deal with social distancing because of their age. But again, that they could have spent 12, 13 weeks at home, not seeing their friends. They're going to want to be with their friends because, they're all going to be leaving our primary schools now in the next 5-6 weeks. So they're going to want to spend as much time as they can. So to minimise this problem in PE, like what I said, the use of outdoor space is recommended for exercise and education. Research suggests that being outside can limit the transmission of coronavirus. Being outside should allow the children to socially distance effectively because it's a greater space, and also allow them to get physically exhausted. Obviously each school's context will vary, and the needs are likely to be greatest where children have not been able to access remote education consistently. Those who have had limited opportunities, like what I just said, we want to ensure that we are physically exerting them, just because they might have been sat on, at home, on their PlayStation, Xboxes, or just, doing, some really good maths or English learning at home, and might not have had the opportunity to have been physically active. So this is our opportunity now to get, our children active again, through supervised non-touch running games. With this statement, it does bring me to another potential issue, and that's us as adults. And I say that just because there's loads of people asking, well, what do I teach? Have I got the confidence to then go and teach it once I know it? And have I got the knowledge and the resources then to be able to deliver physical education with social distancing? As with any lesson, we still need to ensure we know what we want the children to achieve in terms of our learning objective, and how they're going to achieve it in terms of our success criteria. Once we've got our learning outcomes, we can then plan suitable activities that we can incorporate social distancing in. It's recommended that bubbles obviously do not share equipment unless cleaned thoroughly. We've thought of a couple of potential options that could be used in your school to help you with this issue. One option could be that every bubble has their own equipment bag. It could have some cones in, some balls, rackets, whatever's easily wiped and cleaned, and then that bag stays with that bubble for the duration. Now, Dan's going to touch on kind of good practices within PE in a moment, so I won't talk much more about that. But then if we feel that an equipment is an issue, just because I know that a lot of us in schools might not be able to create equipment bags for every bubble, then you might want to just have a look at the curriculum as a whole and have a think at what areas of the curriculum we can deliver with good social distancing practices in, using either a very limited amount of equipment or no equipment at all. AFPE have stated as part of their guidance that activities will come down to your school's preference, but we do believe that athletics, outdoor and adventure, dance, gymnastics, tennis, cricket, and even try golf could easily be delivered in your schools with good planning and cleaning measures in place. If equipment availability is an issue, like what I said, then you might want to allocate a specific area of the curriculum to a bubble or year group. So we could have our year ones focusing on like a multi-skilled athletic style of learning where they can practice their running, their jumping and throwing. And with our year sixes, we can maybe look to focus their learning on outdoor and adventures where we can get them physically exhausted by moving around our school site, and linking our PE back to our maths learning. that you may have been doing in the classroom, obviously currently now or over the current academic year. We have put together like a small resource, which is obviously free to everyone who's obviously attended our webinar this evening, with some example lesson plannings in that have got social distance activities, and they've also got some socially distanced questions to ask yourself whilst you're setting, obviously, these activities or your own activities up. With that now, I'm going to pass you back to Dan, who's going to share some of our thoughts around what we must do before a PE lesson begins.
Yeah, thanks, John. So a lot of what John's gone through there, and the emphasis I want to put on some of what John said is, it's the non-glamorous stuff that we need to focus on. So there are those resources, as John's just mentioned, with the checklist, with the great questions to be asking, and they are, it's a small resource pack, but what's in there is transferable to all other areas of the curriculum or different sports. And if you've got those curriculum focuses for the different year groups, then it does make it a lot easier. What we're going to focus on is the non-glamorous stuff, but the essential stuff, which will then make the fun, and that's the key thing with PE and physical activity, again, is the fun and delivery side of things, feel a lot easier and a lot smoother with all the children involved and any support staff that you're working with. First of all, before I click on what's going to be on the slide, we're looking at what you must do before a PE lesson, and that's what I'm going to go on to. And the first thing I want to talk about is protective measures. Now, when we talk about PE and protective measures, and yourselves, I know you would have been in schools, whether that's full-time, whether that's on a rota, and you may have been delivering PE. I just want to do a really quick poll in the chat, and again, that's in the top right corner, that little bubble. And what I want to do is, there's 4 options, and all you have to do is type a letter into the chat. And I want to get everyone typing an answer into this, and Luke's going to be counting these up and seeing what's the majority answer. It's A, B, C, or D, and the question is, how do you feel about delivering PE from next week onwards during COVID-19? And A is excited, B is quietly confident, C is not sure what to do, and D is completely petrified. So again, that's A is excited, B is quietly confident, C is not sure what to do, and D is petrified. If you can just throw a letter into the chat now, we'll have a little look at that later on and get a bit of a feeling, a bit of a gist for how you guys are feeling. We've done this on the other webinars, and it's been quite interesting to see what we got back. So throw those in there for me. So yeah, as I said, it's protective measures. First and foremost, when I say putting things in place, I don't mean this isn't what you guys want to be looking like. This isn't what we want you guys to be doing. John mentioned about all this equipment earlier, but he did specifically point that towards first aid, which is a very different scenario to generally delivering PE, and we'll touch on how to go about these in a second. But no one wants to be dressed like that, so I know that can be quite a scary thought for everyone. It might have gone through some of your minds, but what we want to do is just ensure safety for you, your pupils, and everyone in the school. And it comes back to this: the preparation, having that checklist in place, making sure, have I done everything I need to do? And that's actually one of the resources we put together for you guys. That's the PE checklist. So we'll have the link up later on in the in this webinar. So when we get to that link, copy it down, and when we get to it, Luke's going to drop that into the chat as well, the link later on, so you guys can copy and paste that into your search bar. That'll take you straight to the landing page where you can access the resources that we've been talking about. Have that checklist to make sure, am I doing everything I need to do? Have the resources that John's put together for you, and with the COVID-19 statements in. So again, even if you're not delivering that part of the curriculum, you can refer to it, and hopefully that can help you plan. So before a PE lesson, a few things we need to look at. So the physical and organisational measures, such as room layouts, entry, exits, are these all clear? And again, how are these laid out? And has that been communicated with the whole school? If for example, you are forced to deliver PE in a hall, we'll touch on how safe that is to do in a moment as well. But if you are delivering PE in a hall and you're forced to because of the weather, and you feel you're comfortable with safety in the space, other staff generally walk into the hall and they might need to speak to you. Has it been communicated to the children that these need to stay clear? How is it marked out? And make sure that they're in place. So when we talk about procedures, it goes really down into these little things as well. Have smaller group sizes being built into the planning. Have you reduced where possible, and John touched on this with regards to sharing equipment or even using equipment? Is that being built into your planning? Is it possible? And something else John touched on with regards to sanitising the equipment, but has the space been sanitised? if you're in a hall, has the floor been cleaned? John mentioned about benches around the outside, around the outside of the hall. If you're outside and there might be some netball posts or equipment that's standing in the playground or in the field, has that been sanitised before the children go near it? And something else is the personal hygiene routine. Have you guys as a school got a personal hygiene routine embedded in place and communicated? If you do, has PE been built into that specifically? It might be slightly different. And has everyone gone through that routine before they start the PE lesson? That's key. So starting the lesson, we want to think, preparing and starting the lesson, we want to think about the pupils themselves. And I know that a lot of schools are looking at doing this or have started embedding this. Some schools we work with have started embedding this. And that's have the children arrive to school in their PE kit. Now that cuts down on, yes, it cuts down on changing time, but it also cuts down on other things with regards to, especially younger ones, helping with shoelaces. Similarly, jewellery. It might be, if you can, has jewellery for the time being banned, especially on PE days or any days in particular. Because again, if there's an injury with regards to jewellery, it then becomes a different issue with regards to injuries. It's more likely then, if there is an injury, yes, first aid, we've got these procedures in place, but actually with COVID-19, that's something we want to really actively avoid. So do you slightly change your policy on the jewellery side of things? I mentioned about the safe PE activity examples being one of the resources. Could you build that into your procedures and your processes? Have I checked that resource and the questions that John's put on there for you? Have I gone through those, even though it might be a different area of the curriculum? Have I asked myself these questions? Have I gone through the checklist? And one last thing is that the pupils' work zones. Have they got specific work zones set up? How are they set up? Could you use, if you're outside, could you use chalk instead of cones, and therefore there's less equipment to touch, it's clean, there's nothing to be transferred. If you or your support staff have been able to mark things out with chalk, it's a lot less hassle, and it could be used by different classrooms, especially if you've got safe zones marked out in chalk. If it rains, we can always put it back down again. If it doesn't, it's still there. Fantastic, it helps the setup. So it's always looking at these different ways to mitigate any issues or any risks. Like I said, it's the non-glamorous stuff, I'm afraid, but they're the things, once you do them, it does make the fun delivery actually fun and less scary and less worrying. So things that we want to do during a PE lesson, and again, people might be thinking, great, what practical ideas, what practical lessons can I actually deliver? And that's where the PE activity examples resource, which is completely free to all of you guys, you can get that when we get to the link. That's where it'll help answer, and that's why we put that together to try and help answer that. But what we want to look at is ensuring safety. If you guys are comfortable and confident with the safety, then everything else and the procedures and policies and the questions you're asking yourself and the checklist that you're doing for yourselves and the support from the checklist that we've created for you, if all of this is in place, then this is what the new norm is. Everyone's talking about the new norm. If you can put these things in place, then the delivery will just come off the back of that, and it'll make life so much easier for everyone. John mentioned about us currently working in schools, and we've got different things in place for different schools because every school is different, every site is different, all needs are different. But once we've got those in place with the schools, it's made things very smooth and very easy, both communication and delivery, transferring children between different areas as well. So I know everyone on here is looking to develop their knowledge and better themselves. Something that I'll touch on later is if you are still looking to better yourself, and develop your skills and knowledge, there's the level 5 primary PE specialism qualification. Just because you're on here, we've got a discounted rate for that for you, and I'll touch on that later. But during a lesson, again, touching on the exits, entrances, walkways clearly marked and constantly managed as well. If you can't use chalk, you are inside, if cones get knocked, we have to manage these. And it's actually, do you manage that? Does a support member of staff manage that, or do the children manage that? And that's a way of, again, mitigating any risk. If they're managing their own area, which is marked out by cones, if that goes out, how do you communicate clearly with the children that they need to keep their area safe and that they're in charge of making sure no one comes into their area, moves out of their area, and all the walkways are clear as well? So how do we communicate that with children? Something as well that some people, everyone's talking about cleaning of equipment, and we'll touch on that in the Q&A much more, I'm sure, that we always get questions about that. But is there a cleaning station present in the PE lesson? Now, John touched on not sharing equipment where possible, or not even using it where possible, but if we do have to use the equipment, If you've got equipment within a bubble that is cleaned at the start of the lesson, at the end of the lesson, and it stays within the bubble, fantastic. A way to increase that a little bit more is if, for example, a piece of equipment needs to be shared, there's a cleaning station, and again, that's clearly communicated to the children. Can they go and get a disinfectant wipe, get some spray, wipe it down, and then with the wipes still in their hand, pass it to their partner who might be in their own space. So if you're throwing a ball and they're hitting it back, they're in their own space, social distancing, but changing over equipment. If you have to do it because you're low on equipment, have you got a cleaning station to ensure that is safe and that is happening? And the last thing is a safe zone for staff. Now, if you are in the hall, or even if you're outside, we know quite often that a teacher, another member of staff, a member of SLT might need to come in and speak to you. There's all these little things we need to think about. How do we make sure that's safe? Something that we've done in school, something we'd recommend, is a safe zone. And that might be right by the door, so that if it's a red safe zone marked up by cones or chalk, it's outside ideally. If a member of staff or pupils go into that safe zone that aren't part of your class or your bubble, then that's a clear indication. There's no shouting that has to be done. There's no trying to walk through walkways to try and stay safe, to speak to a certain child about anything they need to be doing, or speak to you about something you need to be aware of. If someone's in that safe zone, you know you can go over, stay at a safe distance, and speak to that person safely. And again, these are things we need to be thinking about. How do we build this into our procedures, build it into our checklist, and build it into the setup of our lessons as well? As I said, it's the non-glamorous side. I'm just going to fire these 3 pictures up straight away for you. The non-glamorous side with regards to what you must do after a PE lesson as well. And I know that a couple of bits might sound like a broken record, but I can't drill it home enough with regards to, if you put these things in place, it really does make life easier and make everyone a lot more comfortable. And I know with our delivery staff still going into schools, it's made them feel a lot more comfortable knowing these procedures inside out and having these procedures clearly communicated with them and with the children, and also with the parents, as John touched on. So it's children sanitising their own work area. And like I said, that's not just the equipment. They do need to sanitise that as well. And you need to think about, okay, how do they sanitise it? How does that equipment go back into where we're storing it for our bubble? Or if you're not doing equipment per bubble for the whole school, how is that done in a safe way? But also the area that they're working in. Again, this goes back to, if they are working inside, have they cleaned the floor in their own space? And sometimes that's overlooked. Have they cleaned any surrounding equipment that they might have touched or leant on? How do they go about doing that, and what are they using for that? Personal hygiene routine. So again, you may have this in school already, and I know a lot of schools do, which is fantastic. Is it slightly different for PE? If so, how is it different? Why is it different? And how is that communicated to the children? Similarly, changing. So obviously we said about children coming to school in their PE kit where possible, just to save any interaction and make sure that's not taking place. But after a PE lesson, it might be in the middle of the day. They may well be really sweaty from being exerted. And John mentioned the importance of that. These children may have been sedentary for weeks now. But for hygiene reasons, if you want them to get changed, are there different designated changing areas? Is that a separate room? Is that clearly communicated across the school so no one thinks they can use it for a meeting or some reading, or a different space for their pupils? And making sure that the personal hygiene routine is built into those procedures, the changing is built into those procedures, and making sure that everyone is following all of that.
Okay, so you know, there's probably been much debate. Obviously, I'm not just from a PE perspective, but you know, from a general learning perspective. Is new learning pointless, and should we just obviously focus and engage in children again with their learning, whether that's, you know, from a physical perspective, like I said, or, you know, from an in-class maths, English, science, you know, perspective. I'm sure you probably agree with me. There are many pros and cons for starting new learning and for not starting new learning. But when it comes down to PA, we believe that this could actually be seen as an ideal opportunity now to actually start new learning, or, you know, continue further skill development for the children that are obviously coming into our school. Just because, you know, with us working in smaller groups, you know, it's a fantastic opportunity now for us as adults, you know, as educators, teachers, to give, you know, maybe some more one-to-one teaching to a child to really help improve their technique within a sport. You know, and obviously with there being less children and potential less changing around of equipment or, you know, stuff being shared, there's also a greater emphasis of our, you know, of our time. You know, we now have more time to get our children physically active and allow them that chance to practice those sports again, you know, at a real good high intensity. So how can external companies or coaches like Aspire help out our schools? There's been a couple of ways that we've been supporting our schools since lockdown started. So back in you know, March, April time, we still had team members going into our school, you know, into our schools just to support with obviously key workers. Now they were working with those key worker groups, you know, to still teach them some kind of physical education or activity, but then also, you know, to then be an additional pair of hands in school. Now, since schools have reopened, some of our team members are still working with those key worker children, obviously now in that specific key worker bubble, you know, doing those, you know, the exact same tasks that they were and that they were doing before. We have had some team members now working within a bubble for a whole day, or in schools where we work in, you know, across multiple days. You know, they've been involved in a bubble across that whole entire period. Now, we've seen a couple of benefits to that. One benefit is we've got one school, just because they've got the space and the time, our team members are able to deliver an AM PE session as well as a PM PE session, you know, which really allows us to get our children moving again. But another school has actually used our team member within a bubble, but has actually but we've actually been able to make those bubbles even smaller. So where we've had a you know, a team member working in a bubble of 15 across a 2-hour period, that bubble has been split into 2. So we've taken 8 children outside, you know, done some good PE learning whilst the other children have stayed inside with their teacher. And then after an hour, those children have then swapped over. So the children have gone from outside, have gone in, and the in have come out. Now, again, you know, that's been able to be done at that school because, you know, time and their timetable has allowed them to do it. But that's really enabled us, you know, as experts to really focus on, you know, that new learning I was talking about just 5 minutes ago, or you know, all that new, all that further skill development. And then we have had a couple of schools who have actually got us in to set up activities for bubbles. So before a group of children come out, our team member has set up, you know, a PE lesson, and then, as Dan mentioned previously, has then gone and kind of stood in a nice safe place, you know, in their safe zone, outside of the learning area. The children and the teacher have come into that learning area. The teacher's then taken the lesson, but our team members just stayed in that safe zone, just so that teacher, you know, if he or she needs any reassurance on what they want to do, how they can do it, you know, how can they progress it, differentiate certain activities, our team members still been able to provide that, you know, that support to multiple bubbles, but obviously making sure that we're keeping ourselves outside. Now, that has happened only when we're outside, you know, just because, you know, there is a greater space, and, you know, like what we said at the start, you know, that it's the rate of transmission is severely decreased when obviously working outside. Whatever you decide to do, you know, for your school, you know, whether you're going to invite external companies like Aspire back into your schools, or whether your teachers are going to do it, we think there's 3 things that we need to do, whether that's us, you, or everyone together, and that's make sure your lessons are fun. We want to, you know, get children active again, but we also want them to enjoy their learning. We want to inspire children again, you know, just because, you know, for all we know, you know, we could have the next Andy Murray, you know, the next David Beckham, you know, the next Beth Tweddle, you know, in our lessons now at the age of 4 or 5. We want to inspire them to want to do sport again. But thirdly, and most importantly, I think it's important that you enjoy yourself. Like I said, this is the current new norm, and as uncertain as the times are, we still need to make sure that we enjoy ourselves, because if we enjoy ourselves, the children are going to enjoy the lessons we're doing, and they're going to enjoy their learning. So just before I stop talking, there's a couple of different organisations up on your screen now. So there's AFPE, the Youth Sports Trust, and UK Active. Obviously, if you do need any further advice or guidance, then be sure to look at AFPE, especially. Like AFPE today released an FAQ document that's available on their website to everyone. So if you have got any more uncertainties, then definitely have a look at that FAQ. But the Youth Sports Trust have put some really good material out as well, and then UK Active have obviously then made some good suggestions again to activities, but more like the cleaning side of stuff as well. And then obviously we need to ensure that we are obviously all following the government guidelines when it comes to obviously COVID-19. So on that note, I'm going to pass you back to Dan.
Yeah, thanks, John. Before I skip on to the next slide, I just wanted to jump in on the AFPE side of things as well. Like I said, there's lots of different pieces of guidance out there, and I know it can be a bit of a minefield. You might see things that are contrasting information and guidance. AFPE have obviously got their fantastic interpretation that they put out there. They've just put out some frequently asked questions as well, and everything that we do, because we're so closely affiliated with AFPE, we work with them on a lot of things, and we make sure that we also follow their guidance as well as the government's guidance. So the frequently asked questions that they've put out actually mirror quite a lot that we discuss in these webinars and have discussed in these webinars already. So if you're not already an AFPE member, I would recommend as a school becoming an AFPE member, because the support that they provide is second to none. It's fantastic. I mean, on their website, they've got their direct contact information as well. So if you ever need any information, please do go straight there. They are the governing body for PE, as it were, across the country. So please do, if you haven't already, become an AFPE member. That's the biggest advice that I can give you, really. Just briefly before we go on to the Q&A, we've managed to answer some questions in the chat, and I know Luke's been on that, and we'll get to those again in a second. But there's others we'd like to address, some others that we want to give more of a chance for expansive answers in the Q&A. So I hope we'll get to that, and I promise we'll get to that in a minute. I touched on a couple of things earlier, and I know everyone's here to develop themselves, develop their knowledge, and so the people within this webinar, if you are looking to develop your skill set and your knowledge and so on, your expertise, should I say, just because you're here, we put an offer on for the level 5 primary PE specialism qualification. It's there at your screen, so we've knocked the price down for you. The gentleman in the picture you can see there is Crichton Casbon. He's consulted the government on the PE national curriculum. He's the font of knowledge for PE within the whole of the UK, and he delivers the qualification for us. We've delivered it to over 80 people. I believe the impact's been phenomenal. Can't say that word every time. But if you want some outcomes, I know he doesn't mind me saying his name, Michael McDermott at Merricksbrook Academy. He's a member of SLT there, and he went through it. And please feel free to ask around wherever you are in the country. We're obviously West Midlands based, and we deliver the qualification around the West Midlands and in hubs across the country, but there may be other organisations closer to you. If you want some more information, just let me know. And I know accessing training at the moment is difficult, but it is a good time to access training. That we are releasing at the end of July our online CPD platform, and again, there's been huge demand for this. And Crichton Casbon has written the whole content for this, and he is the one that tutors this, and that covers a lot of the level 5 content. It also covers the intent, implementation, and impact, so the Ofsted deep dive side of things. So if that's something else that's on your mind, that I know everything's going on at the moment, but you want to be secure and up to speed on that one, this again we've cut down for everyone in this webinar. It should be £650. It's just £400, and that covers a lot of the level 5 content. If you don't have the level 5, you can actually access that online training anytime you want. It's not there's a webinar this time you've got to log on. It's you've got access, all the pre-recorded videos, downloadable resources, templates, presentations. It's all on there for whenever you want to access it, anytime you want. You can then top up to the level 5. So you complete the work on there. If you want the level 5, you can then just do a short top up to the level 5 and get the full level 5 qualification, and that one's only £400. And lastly, I mentioned about the PE Hub. They wanted to show their support to you guys as well. I know it's a difficult time. They're putting a lot of information out about COVID-19 safe planning, and they want to give you guys a bit of a discount. So there's that code there, webinar 10. That will give you 10% off their planning assessment portal. That's only accessible till the end of July, ready for next year. That's PE Hub's run by qualified teachers, as I said, and there's loads of options, loads of resources out there, but we believe this is the top quality. And there's loads of free resources on there, so go check it out. And if you want to, then you please use that code to get your 10% off. With regards to the free resources, the free downloads, the PE Safe checklist, and the PE Safe, COVID Safe PE activities, the link at the bottom there that you can see. Luke, can you just drop that into the chat for me, please? Hoping Luke's still there. Luke, are you still there?
Yeah, he's done it, Dan. He's just pasted it.
Fantastic. So Luke's just dropped that link into the chat for you. Luke, could you also drop my email address in there, please, as well? So if you've got any questions about any of those highlighted there, we're also doing a free health check, PE school sport and physical activity health check. We normally charge schools for that, but we're just doing the first 30 schools to email me directly, and we can do that over video meet. That's absolutely fine. And that's to really go in deep with regards to what you've got in place for PE. I'll do that over a video. We'll take you through the whole template and just make sure we're supporting you as much as possible and you know what you've got in place. But yeah, most importantly, the link at the bottom is there, and Luke's put it in the chat for you. And quick last thing before I go to the Q&A, a bit more advice on where to get latest information. There are a couple of great Facebook groups out there. However, we are creating another one, which is we're going to create a community. There's no companies going to be on there. There's going to be no sales of any kind on there, including from ourselves. No sales in any way, shape or form. We want this to be for people that want to better their knowledge, share best practice. So if you guys have implemented things, sharing that best practice without having lots of people pop up going, oh, look at this resource, look at this, look at these people, it's only subscription. It's all going to be about sharing best practice between schools. We're going to be putting content on there, but that's going to be content with regards to interviews with people such as Sue Wilkinson from AFP, Crichton, so on and so forth. There's only going to be space for 30 people on that each month, and that'll be increasing. And we've had, I think it's 500 people on these webinars across the 3 webinars. So it is community focused, and we'll be emailing all delegates information about that soon. So now just skipping on quickly to the Q&A. I know, Luke, you've been answering some questions for people, and if you have got any questions that haven't been answered yet, now's the time to just drop them into the chat, and hopefully we'll get to them all for you. But Luke, have you got any earmarked that you wanted to shout out now, and myself and John will help as best we can?
Yeah, there's a few that have come in. Firstly, Petra gave some feedback on the idea that you guys shared using chalk markings on the floor, playground or hall instead of cones to minimise the equipment. Rachel asked about equipment being specific to each bubble, and what are our thoughts on equipment being shared if it has to?
Okay, with regards to equipment and how to use it and how to share it, we touched on a few things and how to keep it safe as possible. We do recommend trying to keep it within a bubble to mitigate risk, but when it comes to specific pieces of equipment you might be thinking about, I would say that all sports national governing bodies, so for example the ECB for cricket, the FA for football, and all the others out there, they are putting out specific information for their sports. And as fantastic as AFPR, YST, UK Active, and UK Active, like John said, have put some great information out there, check those. But if you really want specific advice straight from the horse's mouth, I would say the best thing to do is go straight to the national governing body for that sport. We put out our recommendations and what we've been doing in schools based on what schools have wanted us to do. But the governing bodies are the best place to go to ensure that it is exactly what is being advised. John, did you have anything else to say on that one?
No, Dan, I think you covered it. Just, you know, and obviously, you know, just touching on what Dan said. Obviously, you know, during you know, the webinar, just ensuring that, you know, you have got, you know, those good hygiene practices in place. You know, it's at the start of the lesson. If children are washing their hands when they come into PE, and then, you know, if they are then having to share, then, you know, that is, you know, that will help, you know, limit any potential risks of spreading. any potential infections or germs. But then, if we have those cleaning stations during our PE lessons, and then obviously children clean their hands at the end, then that will, really help keep everyone within those bubbles safe when it comes to obviously using equipment.
And as I said before, with regards to making sure you're as safe as possible, you might be thinking, I'm going to forget to do something. Again, that link, I've left this on the screen on purpose so you guys can see that link at the bottom in bold. And I know it's in the chat as well. I just want to make sure you guys can see it at all times, because that's where you get your free resources. And obviously one of those is the checklist. And we've created that based on what we've been doing in schools and following AFPE guidance and government guidance and UK active guidance as well. And just making sure that if you've got that checklist, no matter what area of the curriculum it is, that can help you keep everything in line. Luke, have you had a chance to look at the poll?
Yeah, in terms of the poll, it was quite evenly spread. So the answers that that you could pick from were excited, quietly confident, not sure what to do, or petrified. Very even split between quietly confident and not sure what to do. Wasn't too many people who were very excited, which is probably expected, and only one person was petrified. So yeah, even split between quietly confident and not sure what to do.
I think that's been a trend through the webinars, and we've always seen some people put in excited, which is good to see. And I think that refers back to what John said, and something that's easy for us to forget is if we get everything in place, what we want to focus on is making sure that we're inspiring the children, and we can do that by leading and ensuring it's fun for them, and it's fun for us as well as educators, as teachers, making sure that the engagement is there, the fun is there. Otherwise, like we said, they could have been sat at home for quite a while, not being active, being great at their math, their English, and all the other work they need to be doing, but the activity levels have dropped. We need to get them back into it. So hopefully we can get everyone back to being excited. And again, those free resources, follow that link. The ideas on the planning that John's put together for you, the key questions to ask up and checklist. If you put all the policies, procedures, and safety precautions ideas we've suggested in place, and any more that you might want to add, then that's where, if that's in place, you know what's going on. That's where the excitement can come back. John, Luke, have we got any more questions?
Yeah, we've got 5 questions. How much time have we got? How many do you want to answer?
We'll try and get through as many as we can. I think we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay, so
I'd like to. I'm Luke. I'd just like to answer the last question, which is about guidance for swimming pools. So that message coming from Chris. Chris, if you go on that FAQ document that I spoke about from AFPE, there's actually a specific question on there that someone's asked AFPE about, obviously the guidance around swimming pools, and AFPE have given their answer, obviously within that guidance. But just to read out what it says within the guidance, it says Swim England is currently working on guidance regarding swimming pools. The following is taken from their website when answering this. All swimming pools are to remain closed until at least early July. If a private residential swimming pool, indoor or out, is used before the date by a paying customer, it would be classed as a commercial swimming pool, and the pool owner would not be following the regulations. And this is also the same for a hydro pool. So at the moment, they're saying keep your swimming pools closed, and then obviously, like what Dan mentioned, obviously about looking at the government bodies, obviously keep an eye out for Swim England, just because they are going to be putting guidance out soon.
Great. Thanks very much for that, John. That's hopefully that's helped some people, because I know swimming is a grey area at the best of times, so hopefully that's helped some people as well. Luke, can we get through a couple more?
Yeah, so let's have a quick look. In terms of the PAE Health Check, Simon's asked where can we get it. So I'm just going to drop Dan's email address again into the thread, Simon, and everyone else. So if you need that health check support, you can email Dan and he'll get in touch with that information.
With regards to that one, it's something that we normally, with schools that use it with us, we normally book in an hour's meeting. We'll organise it in advance. We'll let you know in advance what we're going to go through, because it is quite in depth, it is quite thorough, and it's something that we guide you through. And again, it's an impartial. We've created it in a very impartial way, because as an organisation, we're based in the West Midlands, so if you guys are based in, London or Scotland or any, Carlisle, anywhere well away from us, we'll go through it in exactly the same way we would with the local school. And it's just there to support you, to make sure you've got everything in place you need to have in place. So that would involve, like I said, a meeting with ourselves to support you going through that one. But please drop me an email if you'd like to talk about that anymore. Happy to help.
There are two questions as well that related to each other. So from Becca and Rakeem, basically around ideas, especially for the younger year groups, and if people aren't too confident in delivering PE in general, really, and what to do in these circumstances. So by following the link, you have got the access to the PE Hub resources, and there's an offer code as well. There's a lot of great ideas and resources on there that should help you.
Yeah, so with regards to developing your general knowledge of PE, the things that I've left up there, like Luke said, there's the PE Hub, which is a great resource and platform. If you want to develop your knowledge, the level 5 there, we normally run 2 cohorts a year, and we're looking at the next one starting in about October time, which is the normal time. Hopefully we can do that. But we're also looking at delivering that on distance learning. But if you wanted to start looking at your knowledge with regards to intent, implementation, and impact, and you want to develop yourself now or over the summer holidays, you might still be on a rota. You might have, that might be something you want to focus on. It might be part of your performance review with your SLT. There is the online CPD that's going to be launched at the back end of July, and we'll make sure everyone in the webinars is shared with that information and has that discount. The other side of things John mentioned is we are working with some schools with regards to PE curriculum support, so upskilling and mentoring teachers in PE still. They've asked us to continue doing that, and we're doing that at a safe distance. So we're setting up the activities, we're in a safe zone, and we're working with that. We are still working with that teacher, just in a bit of a different way. So there's practical ways of doing it. There's resources out there, like we said about the PE, putting some great information out. There's and then there's the training and qualifications. And if you've got any questions about that, again, my email's in the chat. Drop me an email. I'm happy to answer any questions. Whether you're somewhere we can support you or not, I'm still happy to help out, answer questions around anything. Really. If you haven't had your question answered tonight, then please feel free to drop me an email. So I think we've just run out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to close off with, John?
To be fair, I forgot to say it, obviously during, so I suppose it is a good way to kind of finish our webinar this evening, and that's, end of the day, we all want the same thing. We want to ensure that everyone remains safe, but we also obviously, we've tuned into this webinar tonight because, most importantly, we want to get our children active again and really enjoying their PE. So that's what I'd kind of like to finish on this evening, is stay safe, enjoy PE, and like what Dan said, like if you do need any support in terms of that PE health check, then drop down that email, and hopefully we look forward to having some really good conversations with everyone in the future.
Brilliant. I'll mirror those sentiments. We're always here to help, always here to support, and I'm happy to do so. So please, if you've got any questions, even if we can't answer it directly, like I said, we're very closely linked with Sue and her team at AFP, and we'll help in any way that we can. I'd just like to say thanks to everyone for spending your evening with us. I know we've had some people come in and going out, and I'm sure that lots of people have got things going on. Hopefully what we've shared today has been helpful for you. If you need anything clarified, please get in touch. But I really hope you guys stay safe. I hope everything goes well from Monday, with potentially increased children coming in. And if you ever need anything, you know where we are. So thank you very much for spending your time with us, and hopefully speak to some of you soon. We are delivering more webinars, and if you have actually got anything that you want us to deliver a webinar on in particular, if you could drop that into the chat now, then we've got some lined up, but we are making sure that everything we deliver is in line with what people are wanting and needing. Drop it into the chat for us, and we can look at how we can fit that into our webinar series. But thanks very much again, and stay safe, everyone. Have a great evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers all. Thank you.